Hello, this video is about how to reverse a linked list, which is a classic linked list problem. So the question goes like this. You are given a linked list and which is a data structure that looks something like this. You'll have a node with some value. Let's say the value is 1, right? And then the node will also have a pointer which points to next node, which can again have some value and another pointer. So let's say your linked list looks like this. Linked list data structure would look something like this. Let's call the data structure type linked list. And this would have a field called value, which let's say is a number in our case, if we are storing a number in the linked list, and another field called next, which is a pointer to a different linked list node. So this would be of type linked list, which is pointed by the current node. And let's also have a constructor which would enable us to create an object of this class linked list. By the way, this is all in TypeScript. So we take a value, let's call it val, which what it does is assigns the value that we get while constructing the linked list node, right? So if you create a linked list node called 1, suppose 1 would be a new linked list which is initialized with this number 1, right? And you have another linked list node called 2. Right, so the next of 1 would point to 2. Right, so this is basically how a linked list works. Now if I want to display the values of 1 and 2, I do something like this, console.log 1.value, right? And if I say one.next.value, this will print 2 because 1.next points to 2. So the code for reversing a linked list would look something like this. Let's say we have a function called reverse, which is supposed to reverse the linked list. It's a function which takes head of the linked list, right? And head is just the starting point of your linked list. So if our linked list looks like this, 1, 2, 3, and the end of the linked list would point to a node which has the value of null. Null in programming means something that is not defined. So let's see how we reverse the linked list. So what we're supposed to do is 1, instead of pointing to 2, would now point to null, which is the end of the linked list, right? And 2 would point to 1, right? So we reverse the pointers. So this would point to null, this would point to 1, and so on. This would point backwards. So we need 2 variables to store the next item in the linked list and the previous item. So let's call them next and previous. Right, next and previous, which are initially null. Right, so let's start processing with the head. As long as we start processing with the head, and we keep moving the head, and each time before we move, each time we will rearrange the pointer. So while we have head to process, right, while we have head to process, next is the node that's currently being pointed by the head. So next would be head next, right, and now head next would point to previous item, right? So the next of this node 1 is currently pointing towards 2. This would point towards the previous item, which is initially null, right? And then we set the previous to be the current head, so that the next time this operates, next time we are inside this loop, head dot next would point to the previous node that we had just processed before the beginning of the iteration. And then we continue moving the head to the next item. Finally we return the previous node, not the head node, because at the end of this loop head would be null, so we want to return something just before the head, which would be 3 in this case. So anyhow, yeah, this is the code for reversing a linked list.